wanted to cover a couple of things, though, while I've got you guys here. IATA Safety Survey. That survey is complete now. Hopefully some of you participated in that. A little background on that. You know, the history here with these safety surveys and safety efforts with the company have not been wonderful. Those of us that have been around a long time remember the NASA sleep study. We remember the Enders report. We also remember being excluded from the distribution of the data, and the findings of those reports did not instill great confidence and did not lead us, to believe that safety was necessarily being put where we thought it should have been. The IATA Safety Survey came about, and basically the company reached out to us to see if we would put our shoulder to that wheel and encourage people to participate. The conversation that took place around that, of course, was we're not going to participate in something that looks a lot like Enders or the NASA sleep study at the end of the day. It has to be something we're included in, and the results are distributed. So to that end, that survey's finished, and Vice President of Safety, Flight Safety, Bobby Wells, invited Todd Carpenter, our Central Air Safety Committee Chairman, onto the data analysis team. So we are in the room with the data analysis, so Todd will be there as the information is analyzed. And she's assured me to the greatest extent possible, which will be consistent with that team's findings, that it'll be distributed to you guys. So we should see something on this safety survey. We're the first carrier in the U.S. to do this survey. So that survey has been done by European carriers and been done by some Asian carriers. So we're kind of the, ground zero here in the U.S. for those survey results. So when you see that, just keep that all in mind. So that's one thing that's gone on that I think is pretty positive, and I'm glad to see the steps to maybe identify some of our areas of concern about safety, not that we haven't been doing that. To that end, the environmental standards effort that Captain Bob Avery brought to us a few years ago, and we identified, a laundry list of items of concern. There's a joint comm, I don't know if it got out today or tomorrow, that came out that kind of highlights some of the stuff the company's responded to Bob's issues with. Now, they went out and hired outside vendors to clean the cockpits and the lavatories and service the water. A lot of these things, the MD-11 air duct cleaning, came directly out of that interaction, and it took time for them to arrange, for these things to be done. Plus, they put a quality assurance piece in there, which we believe was missing. In the past, I think Bob had made some headway when he was in management, working on the other side on this. He had made some headway, and then what happened was there was a brief flurry of interest, and then it kind of died away when I talked to Bob about how things went. This time we're hoping that QA piece keeps that from happening. The other QA piece is you guys. So when you see things out there that aren't right, you gotta highlight them. You gotta report them. And so we're the ultimate QA on that, and that's our workplace. So those cockpits and the lavatories and the galleys, beyond that, the sleep rooms, the crew spaces. If things aren't right, don't just accept it and move on down the road. We need your help making sure this stays at a level where we want it. The other thing that I wanted to finally talk about was we finally got the 767 Passover Pay settlement. That only took a couple of years. Brutal. I'm glad it's finally resolved and the money's got distributed. We're about to see for the first time the system bid. There's going to be a large system bid coming out in February, and it'll be the first test, presumably, of the new software to be in compliance with the contract. So with the ability to bid training, all of the stuff that goes with that. Anybody with history around here with IT and the company, get ready. I hope it works. I hope it comes off flawlessly. And God bless them if they get it right. But history would tell me to to be a little wary. So once again, I need feedback. As you guys get into this, if you start to see anomalous things that don't add up to you, or if you have questions about it's a new process and all that, obviously call contract enforcement and keep us informed. So that's another thing. Another thing I want to talk about is R&I Committee. We went through quite a process here over the last few months, and over the last week or so trained and stood up a new committee. We had a lot of help in that process, and I don't know if he's here today, but Captain Dave Chase and Captain Jim Mumby. Jim, you can stand up. These guys, all I had to do was pick the phone up and say, hey, we could use a hand, and they were there. And they came down, and basically we stood up a committee. And so the MEC has approved First Officer Ben Douglas. Ben, you in here somewhere, back in the back over here? Ben is your new R&I Chairman. Captain Bill Hubble, I don't believe Bill's here today, but Bill is the Vice Chairman. Bill was a former non-status rep from Anchorage, and Bill has also got committee experience. He worked on the COM committee some and P2P, and I think Bill's done a bunch of things. I don't know if any of you guys are here. Ben Monshore, did Ben make it today? Ben Monshore joined the committee. Josh Carter, First Officer Josh Carter. Jamie Morton came on the committee. Jamie's gone on to the investment committee. And First Officer Kevin Biggins also joined the committee, and Kevin took chairmanship of the PBRB. Others on that PBRB, Captain Marcus Campbell, First Officer Susan Alexander, First Officer Tony Miller, Captain Josh Tigert, and Captain Todd Lessig. So that committee is fully staffed. And before I leave this R&I topic, I want to point out that the folks that do this work, they put a lot in, man. And at times it gets pretty emotional, and you get caught up in it, and it's not pleasant. And I've certainly spent my amount of time over the last 30 years in the good, the bad, and the ugly of union work. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank somebody that's in this room for all the service he's given to this pilot group over the last many, many years. Ken Bender's standing back there. Ken continues as National R&I Chair, and I'm happy about that. I would also like to thank, and I didn't see him here, but Corey Franklin as Vice. Corey did a lot of work over the years. Andrew Franklin, Jim Ewan, and David Jeter all did a lot of great service for this group, and sometimes the time's right just to move on. So if you see these guys out there, give them a pat on the back, give them a thank you. And these new guys, same thing. Thanks for stepping up. Retirement. It's been an amazing journey. For me, the journey began in 1993 with OBRA 93 when the government chopped the compensation caps that you could put in a defined benefit plan. I attribute the organization of the union ultimately to that in the beginning. We have been through ups and downs of retirement. We have been through disappointments. I mean, I could go back to every bargaining period, and for me personally, every single one of them has left me disappointed with how retirement has progressed. And so after this last one, and we surveyed you guys, it was pretty obvious what the main issue was with the low ratification. So we took it serious, and we put our best effort in our most rational way toward trying to understand what that was about and trying to understand if there was any possibility to improve this. The MEC had gotten into a fairly bipolar condition there between DC only and diversified DBDC argument. I don't remember anybody even thinking that there was a third or fourth or fifth way you might do this. It got so focused and so angry and so upsetting. We don't want to be there again. I'm sure of that. I won't be. I'll be retired when you all get to have that fight if that's what you decide to do. I would prefer you didn't. I think we've found something. I think we've found something pretty remarkable. There's a reason why all these guys that represent you all support what we're doing unanimously. That's unusual, okay, on something this big. So that should tell you something anecdotally. Up to this point, we've talked conceptually. We've taken our time, ma'am. We have gone slow. We have not wanted anybody to believe we were trying to railroad them or leave them in the dirt or undermine them or cut them out of the picture. We have done this as slowly and methodically as we possibly can. So we have tried to bring you up step by step along the education line. We started off talking about risk, different types of risk, because one of the things we noticed early on was we tended to use that term in a very broad sense. You go, well, what's riskier, DB or DC? Well, you know, in reality, it depends on what kind of risk you're talking about. There's different kinds of risk: inflation risk, investment risk, business risk, life risk, bargaining risk. There's 8, 9, 10 easily identifiable types of risk, and all of these plan designs mitigate those risks to some degree or another differently. Some do a better job with others. So what we were looking for was something that would do the broadest, best job of mitigating risk in as many of those categories as we could. So that was one of the early efforts. We then brought you the Y draw to kind of just talk about the concept of a variable plan. The phase we're going to enter here today, when I hand this over to Pat, we're going to now start talking about specifics. We're going to now start talking about specifically how the mechanism works, the accumulation of benefit, and we're going to start that process today. It will go on for the next several weeks, a couple of months, and we will try to get out and give you as much detail as we can. If you don't understand it, we'll make it certainly available to ask any questions. We'll do our best to answer those questions. There is, like I said, I'm confident that as we share this material with you and you start to see the logic of what's going on here, that just like these guys, I expect to see a very, very high level of support for what we're doing. So I ask that you study the materials that have been sent out to you and that will be sent out. We are going to get crew room meetings stood up, not the big broad meetings I'm trying to arrange over there at conference room, where we can sit down with maybe 15, 20 people at a time, where we really have time to talk about it, where we have time to answer questions, where you can come look at the modeling software and plug your information in and see for you specifically how this works for you, because that's ultimately what matters to you, is how it works for you. I mean, these guys have to consider the group as a whole and balance out the various demographics and needs within the system. Obviously, you individually care about one person, and that's you. So I need you to, basically get to a place where you can look at this and how it affects you, and I think that'll probably help out there for you. Like I said, I think we have an excellent plan. I believe it will dramatically improve our benefits. It obviously depends on where you are and how much time you have for the accumulation. For the younger guys that are 30-something years old with a long career ahead of them in a much better accumulation model than we currently have, you're going to see dramatic. Dramatic's probably not even a good enough word for it. You're just going to see really, really interesting benefit improvements. I also believe this thing we've done is more secure than what we currently have. So it meets what I think are the basic parameters, that it's more valuable and it's more secure. So these are debatable. They're debatable terms, and like I said, we invite your questions. We've got experts. We've hired the best people in the country, as far as we could find out, to do this for us. This effort has not gone unnoticed. This effort has caught a lot of notice. I get calls from people outside FedEx, other airlines, other businesses. I get calls from people now asking if we'll talk to them. They'd like to know what we're doing. I was invited to come talk to the Delta MEC a couple of months ago. They're very interested. They are, vigorously investigating this to get maybe stood up with their DC-only situation they've got now. They'd like to get back to a pension plan. So there's a lot going on to that level, and one thing I want to say is that Bloomberg News called last week for an interview about the effort. I was happy to talk to them about the effort. I'm happy to share what we've discovered and put together, what these guys have put together. I'm happy to share it with anybody that wants to listen, because whether we decide to do it or not, I think it's valuable. And I think this country's in trouble. I think the retirement systems that collapsed after the dot-com crash and after the '08 crash have left this country in a mess, retirement-wise. And if we don't come up with some creative solutions to retirement, there's going to be a lot of people going through the backside of life in a really, really bad way. So we think we found something. It takes advantage of regulatory changes that have occurred over time. Our existing DB plan is a product of 1970s regulation, the ERISA regulation. The world's changed. The world's moved on. The regulations have moved on, and we didn't. And for the most part, the people that didn't move on now have bankrupt plans. They're now under PBGC payments. We're fortunate. We're not. So that puts us in a position now to be in control of our own destiny. You want to be in control of your own destiny. Go talk, how many refugees in here from Delta, United, from places with bankrupt pension plans? Talk to your friends that don't know about that, because they need to know. We're trying to come up with a way to protect ourselves. So I think we have. These guys are going to talk to you about it. Realize this education process, like I said, enters a new phase today. We're going to start talking particulars. We will do multiple surveys, so expect that. It'll be the New Hampshire area code. Phil Comstock will be doing the surveys. The surveys have multiple missions. One of the primary missions, especially early in the process, is to assess your knowledge. We need to know what we're communicating and how effectively we're communicating. If there are important features of this plan that aren't understood, we need to know that. So we're going to be trying to figure that out. The other thing we're going to try and figure out over the time of these surveys is your support level. These guys want to know. They're not going to take you somewhere you don't want to go. I'm certain of that. They want that information. So their surveys will, in fact, get at your level of support for what we're doing. And so I expect that. And at the end of the day, guys, everybody that's worked on this has done it for you and for themselves and for our families. And nobody here is trying to destroy anything, undermine anything, leave you in worse place. The motives are good. The effort's been strong. That doesn't mean it's not debatable. I get it. But, like I said, I've sat inside the room through a lot of debates over the last several years. And it's refreshing to me to see the 14 reps all on board. And that to me is powerful.